Rosarena. So it's something that's stood for a while. Um, Another one that sticks out to me, and I think it's hard to dispute this one, is Mariano Rivera. Um,
Yeah.
he has this is 32 different series, 16 years, 8-1 record, which that's not that big of a deal. 0.7 ERA. He had 141 innings pitched. He struck out 120. And he had a whip of .759.
Amazing.
So he was always just absolutely on his game. He only hit 3 batters, only walked 21 guys too, which, like, we're talking over 16 years. Like, that to me, it's hard to beat. And they also say one of their big ones is that Rivera's allowed less runs in the postseason than men have walked on the moon. That's always one of my favorite things to talk about.
He was I can't say enough about him. I'm glad you brought him up. He was amazing. He just had those 2 moments, right? He had the Sandy Alomar home run, and then he had 2001. But even 2001 wasn't his fault,
Yeah.
I forgot who he was.
And also maybe 2004.
Yeah. But
that also wasn't
that steal was big. I guess. I mean, because someone great like that, they have to fail big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so I think you got 2 good ones. You have anybody else?
Those are the only 2 I have.
Okay. Yeah, Beltran was great, especially with the Astros. He was just unbelievable in the postseason. So it's still, if I need one starting pitcher to start a game, I'm still going with Bob Gibson. And now that I think about Mariano, bring Mariano out of the bullpen, but with Gibson, you're not going to need him. So I'm still going with Gibson. But I have two players that are both Yankees, believe it or not. I'm still in awe of Yogi Berra's, playing in 75 World Series games and hitting in 71 of them. I mean, he only had 4 games out of all those World Series games that he didn't get a hit. I think the guy was just so clutch. Obviously none of us remember, Yogi Berra playing, but I thought that was just so clutch. But to me, the guy that just always seemed to get the big hit, but he only batted .275, but again, more games. He had 22 homers, 80 RBIs in his postseason career is Bernie Williams. I just think that he, I mean, if you needed a double up the gap in left center, he was the guy to do it. I mean, there was something different about him. So that's, if you look at the players over the years, and we can name probably a lot more, but to me, and Jeter is close, but if you looked at, does that player just look and feel differently now that the playoffs has started? To me, Bernie was that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought he was just outstanding in the postseason. Again, his postseason average is .275. So it doesn't seem that great, but every time they needed a big hit, he got it.
Yeah. If I remember right, for a while he led wasn't he the all-time leader in RBIs in the playoffs?
Yeah, he might still be. I don't know. I mean, I have so many layers now. Those stats have kind of a little bit gone out of the window, because of the layers. But you think about 80 RBIs. That's, 22 and 80 and 275. That's a great season, let alone, postseason. Right? I mean,
yeah.
I thought he was unbelievable. All right, how about in the NBA?
I don't know. To me, it's easy to just say Michael Jordan. I was just looking up his numbers just to double check. I mean, he averaged 33 points in the playoffs. Like, that's kind of hard to refute.
Yeah.
But also, like, Rajon Rondo, there's people have been talking about him, especially this year, as he's a guy that takes up his game in the playoffs. Numbers don't really say it that much for me. But one guy that does stick out is Ray Allen. Look at the teams that he was on the 08 championship team for the Celtics. Obviously had the big shot in the Heat series against the Spurs. And also just in general, Ray Allen, there's very few people where I would say, if you want a three-pointer, he's probably one of your guys. Him, maybe Steph Curry. Probably now it would be Steph Curry, but he's definitely one that's out there.
That's a great one. I hadn't thought about Ray Allen. That's a great one. So I'm with you. I'm going to put Bill Russell and Michael Jordan on a different plane. I mean, Bill Russell winning, going to 10 finals, winning all 10. Jordan obviously 6 for 6 and 33 points. I knew it was in the 30s. I didn't realize it was that much. So I'm going to put them on a different level. I don't think anybody can touch them. Here's a guy that to me stood out through the 90s and thousands. Again, when I talk about regular season, because it felt like regular season he was just okay, but postseason this guy was unbelievable. That's Robert Horry. Now he's not a Hall of Famer for sure, but this guy would never miss a big shot, and he did it with different teams too, right? He did it with the Rockets and the Lakers, and then the end of his career he did it with San Antonio. I mean, the guy was just put the ball in his hands, with a minute left or 10 seconds left. If it's a regular season game, he might hit it. If it's a postseason game, he's hitting it. I don't know his stats. His stats were probably decent. They were probably really good. But when I just think of a guy who wanted the lights, shining on him in the postseason, it's him. The other guy that I thought of that was close, and maybe he's probably just as good, was Reggie Miller. I mean, he had so many big shots against the Knicks. He hit that big shot against the Bulls that year. I mean, he also seemed to bring his game up. But Reggie Miller seemed to me like he was great every night, where Robert Horry was a very good player, very good six-man most of his career. But postseason, forget it. The guy was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, who do you got in football?
Once again, you could easily say Tom Brady, but I feel like he's kind of on another level.
Yeah.
But I think as part of the Tom Brady deal, I would say Julian Edelman has been like one of those guys that would step it up.
Yeah.
Like he would always be like regular season, like never really a top guy. But then like I feel like every single year he'd have like a 10 reception, 150-yard, 2 touchdown type of game. I feel like he always kind of stepped up his game once the stage got brighter.
Yeah. Okay, I totally agree. I've got a few, but a couple of them are pretty obvious. So I'm going to say the one that's not so obvious in a second. Certainly Brady. I mean, again, maybe let's put him on that other level, right? Because it's just unbelievable what he's done. I thought John Elway in the postseason was great, and I think what was interesting with him was that his first 3 Super Bowls weren't that good, and then his last 2 really late in his career too, which is spectacular, So, but he's a little bit obvious as well. So is Troy Aikman. I think he's also a little bit obvious because the guy was also good in the regular season and everything. Here's the guy to me though and it's just 2 Super Bowls, but to me you couldn't have played 2 more perfect games than the games that Eli Manning played.
I was going to say him too.
I mean, and I'm going with your teams here, but Eli, what the Giants did, I think, again, as we get further away from it, I think we'll appreciate it more. But what they did with that, that Patriot team that was perfect that year and just pick them apart and just pull the game out was just unbelievable. And Eli just never made any mistakes in the postseason. And it wasn't just that game. It was, the playoff games leading up to it, every single playoff game, the guy was just, he was just on fire. It was a shame that the Giants didn't make the playoffs more during his career, because he just seemed to rise to just a different level. Very good quarterback, right? Don't get me wrong. He's very good regular season quarterback. But for my money, I got one game to win in the Super Bowl. Aside from Tom Brady, I'm taking Eli. and I'm taking Eli for the Super Bowl, even a little bit over Joe Montana. Montana was great in the Super Bowls. Roger Staubach was great. Terry Bradshaw was just an okay quarterback, I thought, in the regular season, but in the playoffs and the Super Bowls, he was unbelievable. But Eli, it was just something special about him. I can't put my finger on it. Those 2 games they just stand out for me.
Yeah, and I think of the first one too. Like he beat Brett Favre in the the first twilight of his career.
Yeah.
And then he also, if I'm not mistaken, he beat Tony Romo in the playoffs that year too.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was because especially that year they were 9-7. The next time they made it, it was 10-6. They weren't great regular season teams, But like once they made the playoffs and they were in, like something clicked. Now, when they made it with Odell and all those other guys and they're partying the night before, it didn't really work out. But we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, that wasn't his fault. All right, we're at like 32 minutes, so we'll go ahead and get ready to wrap up. I loved your choices. I think those were great. I certainly was thinking Mariano. Maybe Mariano we need to put on that other level as well.
Yeah, probably.
But so anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this, guys, and we'll talk more next week. We'll certainly have some World Series to talk about next week, and I'm sure we'll have a couple of other positive topics. So, but for now, this is Kenny and
Kenny Squared
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. We will talk to you real soon.
See ya.